Humans attack Dracula and take from him what he loves the most. Holding Mavis in his arms, he flees and takes refuge in a castle. He promises his daughter that no one will ever hurt them again. He builds a sanctuary where she and other monsters can live in peace, far from the world that hunts them. Thus, in a deep forest, he opens Hotel Transylvania. He looks at a photo of his late wife and whispers, "We did it, Martha. Mavis will be safe." Dracula has experienced the cruelty of the world firsthand. To prevent Mavis from suffering the same, he built her a safe haven, far from any threat. However, without realizing it, his extreme protection will end up being exactly what puts her in danger. Years pass, and the hotel is a success. Monsters from all over choose it as their safe refuge, far from humans. Drac's best friends arrive: Frankenstein and his wife Eunice, Murray the Mummy, Griffin the Invisible Man, and Wayne and Wanda, the werewolves with their endless litter of pups. They all come to celebrate Mavis's 118th birthday. Her friends say she's grown up so much, but Dracula, in a threatening tone, replies, "No, she's still a child." Dracula enters Mavis's room. She reminds him that, years ago, he promised she could go out and see the world when she turned 118. She starts to explain her reasons, expecting resistance, but to her surprise, Dracula agrees immediately, without conditions. Mavis can't believe it. Excited, she puts on a floral blouse, a hat, and grabs her suitcase. She's ready to go to paradise, the place from the old postcard she's kept since she was a child, where her parents had their zing, their love at first sight. Dracula clarifies that the place is called Hawiwi, but before going that far, he suggests she visit the nearest human village, just a few kilometers from the hotel. Mavis agrees, hugs her father, and thanks him for trusting her. Turning into a bat, she flies toward the village, but of course, Dracula wasn't going to let her go alone. Secretly, he follows her. Mavis arrives in the village and finds it deserted. Suddenly, aggressive villagers appear with torches and pitchforks. She tries to be friendly, but they surround and threaten her. They throw fire and garlic at her. Frightened, Mavis realizes her father was right. Humans are dangerous. Heartbroken, she returns to the hotel, convinced that going out isn't worth it. Dracula is thrilled. His plan worked. Now, Mavis will be safe forever. At that moment, he tells the villagers they can return to work. They were zombies working at the hotel, disguised as humans. The village didn't even exist. It was just a set Dracula built to scare Mavis and keep her away from the human world. Although Dracula tricked Mavis with a fake setting, he doesn't feel like he's lying to her. He believes he's showing her what he sees as the true nature of humans, only in a controlled environment. His perception of humans as violent, intolerant, and dangerous doesn't come out of nowhere. He's been hunted and has suffered because of them. But that's where his mistake lies, assuming that everyone is like those who hurt him. When we have a negative experience with something or someone, we tend to see anything that reminds us of it as a threat. And it makes sense. If something resembles what caused us harm, it's logical to stay away from it as a form of protection. Our past experiences help us identify the danger in the future, but we also risk overestimating them and treating them as universal rules. Sometimes, what happened to us is just one possibility among many others. For example, if Dracula had met different kinds of humans, he would have reached a completely different conclusion. While our experiences may make us more cautious, assuming what happened to us is the norm can limit us. It's like believing that just because one man hurt you, they all will. Yes, you may meet more people like that, but also many who aren't. And if we cling to our negative experiences, our fears, and rigid beliefs, we risk missing out on new opportunities, new relationships, and new experiences. Back at the hotel, Mavis tells her father that he was right. The human world is terrible. To cheer her up, Dracula reminds her that this year she'll finally be able to open the gift her mother left for her 118th birthday. Dracula returns happily to the lobby until he sees a human walk through the front door. A young backpacker named Johnny, who, after spotting a group of strange figures walking through the forest, decided to follow them. While Dracula hides in his bubble and avoids the unknown, Johnny does the exact opposite. If he sees something interesting, he simply follows it without worrying about what might happen. He loves stepping out of his comfort zone and discovering new things. Dracula panics. He hides Johnny before anyone sees him. He can't allow the monsters to find out a human has entered. Or worse, what if Mavis becomes friends with him? He dresses him as Frankenstein and pretends he's a distant cousin of the Stein family. Johnny is thrilled. He thinks everyone is in costume for a big party and compliments the monsters on their outfits. But the hotel chef, Quasimodo, is suspicious. His rat, Esmeralda, smells something strange. She senses a human. Dracula acts quickly and hides Johnny just in time. but he slips away. He soon discovers the skeletons, witches, and mummies aren't costumes. They're real. He panics and runs, but crashes into Mavis, and something happens. Their eyes glow with a pink light. They've had a zing. Dracula arrives and grabs Johnny and is about to throw him out when Mavis catches up with them. She asks her father what he's hiding. Who is that guy? Dracula improvises and explains he's the party planner. He wanted the event to be special and modern, so he hired someone her age. Mavis lights up instantly. She's never met someone young like her, and without hesitation, tells Johnny that after planning the party, they should spend some time together. Dracula panics. He rushes to sneak Johnny out through a secret underground passage, but runs into his friends. They suggest he sing at Mavis's surprise show, but Dracula refuses. Since Martha passed away, he hasn't sung since. Dracula avoids anything that reminds him of her. This shows us that his grief remains unresolved, that he hasn't fully processed his loss. Mavis shows up, fascinated by Johnny, and starts bombarding him with questions. The friends meet the boy and find it very odd that Dracula, who's obsessed with control, would let someone else plan the party. That need for control is directly tied to his unresolved grief. Losing Martha left him with a deep sense of helplessness, anxiety, and uncertainty. To cope, he clings to what he can control. If we look closely, he doesn't just protect Mavis from the human world. He restricts her from any kind of freedom. He doesn't let her leave the hotel, not even to visit other places where more monsters live. He doesn't allow her to make friends her own age or plan her own birthday party. But his obsession with control doesn't stop with Mavis. It extends to his own life. Dracula doesn't leave the hotel either. He makes his friends come to him. He clings to the familiar, the same places, routines, and people, because there, everything is predictable and safe. His fear isn't just of humans, but anything beyond his control. By not working through his loss, he lets the wound of the past govern his present. Johnny listens to the musical number the friends are planning and finds it incredibly boring. He suggests something more energetic, a rock and roll show. Everyone has a blast, except Dracula, who is furious. Johnny is ruining his perfect schedule. The new ideas Johnny brings stress Dracula out, not because they're bad or dangerous, but simply because they take him out of his comfort zone. If something doesn't go according to plan, he immediately sees it as a threat. The events continue as Dracula had arranged, but no one is enjoying themselves. A dull bingo game and a miming activity leave everyone yawning. The atmosphere feels lifeless. Then, Johnny grabs his scooter and starts zipping around the hall. Within seconds, he lifts the mood. When Johnny discovered that the guests weren't wearing costumes, but were real monsters, his first reaction was fear. But instead of holding on to that impression, he decided to get to know them better. He soon realized that they weren't dangerous, but friendly. His assumptions were wrong. So he let go of his fear and started treating them like anyone else, and even began to have fun with them. Dracula, on the other hand, never allowed himself that opportunity. Granted, his experience was far more painful and traumatic, but instead of facing them again, he chose isolation and avoided any contact. While Johnny was able to challenge and change his beliefs, Dracula remains attached to the image of humans he formed long ago. Johnny shares stories of his travels around the world, and the monsters listen, fascinated. Dracula, jealous and frustrated, tries to kick him out again, but Johnny, without meaning to, turns the party into the best the hotel has ever seen. Everyone ends up in the pool, splashing around and laughing. The hotel has been a great refuge for monsters over the years. However, in his efforts to keep it safe, Dracula rejected all change or novelty and turned it into a dull place. By clinging so tightly to safety and familiarity, he deprived both himself and others of new possibilities and greater joy. Dracula loses his temper. He tells Johnny to stop the chaos, but Johnny replies that it's not chaos, it's fun. Fed up, Dracula threatens him. If he doesn't leave, he'll suck every last drop of his blood. Johnny decides to go, but before he can walk out the door, Mavis catches up to him and invites him for a walk. She takes him to the rooftop. Mavis questions about his travels. Johnny tells her about Budapest, Hawaii, and the music festivals he's attended. Mavis finds it hard to believe. She asks if humans have ever attacked him. Johnny laughs. Sometimes the festivals get wild, but he always has a great time. She's amazed by all of this. Johnny tells her, "What's the alternative? Stay home and never see anything of the world? We're only young once. We have to live it." Johnny is the complete opposite of Dracula. While Dracula represents control and tradition, Johnny symbolizes freedom, novelty, and spontaneity. And that's precisely what draws Mavis to him, because he embodies everything she's always longed for, the chance to discover the world on her own. The sun begins to rise. Mavis runs to hide since she's a vampire and the sunlight could burn her, but Johnny stops her. She doesn't have to shut herself away completely. She can watch the sunrise from the shadows. For the first time, she watches the sunrise and is left in awe. This scene encapsulates the central message of the story. In real life, dangers exist. Things that can truly hurt us, but that doesn't mean we should freeze, hide, or isolate ourselves completely. As Johnny teaches Mavis, avoiding danger at all costs deprives us of valuable experiences. Instead, we can learn to face it more safely, finding a balance between sunlight and shadow, between enjoying life and protecting ourselves. For instance, entering a relationship carries the risk of getting hurt, but that doesn't mean we should avoid it altogether. We can choose carefully to set boundaries, recognize warning signs, and take the time we need before committing. The same goes for traveling, changing jobs, starting a project, or trying something new. While all of these things do carry their own risks, we can learn to manage them wisely. However, Dracula, in his attempt to protect Mavis by keeping her away from any danger, has paradoxically made her more vulnerable. By isolating her from the world, he has kept her away not only from threats, but also from the tools she needs to face them. Mavis doesn't know how to identify danger, make good decisions, or protect herself when needed. Many parents, even with the best of intentions, try to spare their children the pain and hardship they once experienced. This is admirable, but this avoidance becomes problematic when it prevents children from developing the ability to solve problems on their own. If they never make decisions or face mistakes, they'll never learn to take responsibility or grow from those experiences, which ultimately hinders their maturity and independence. Instead of becoming stronger, they become dependent and ill-prepared for real life. A clear example is how Mavis was completely captivated by Johnny without truly knowing him. It's not that Johnny's a bad person, but the problem is that Mavis has no frame of reference. She's never spent time with people her own age, so she doesn't know how to distinguish who's genuinely good and who isn't. She simply saw something new and was dazzled by it. The irony is that in trying to protect her, Dracula has left her defenseless. If Mavis were to face real danger one day, she wouldn't have the tools or the experience to recognize it. Protecting someone doesn't necessarily mean shielding them from the whole world. It means helping them learn how to face it on their own. When Dracula sees that Johnny is still at the hotel, he forces him to help set up the tables for the party. Johnny discovers he can make them float and starts flying all over the room. Dracula ends up chasing him on a floating table, and to his surprise, he begins to have fun. The two crash and fall to the floor laughing. For the first time, Dracula allows himself to enjoy something new. Maybe the unknown isn't as bad as he thought. Perhaps even some humans aren't as bad after all. Dracula gets up, but Johnny is gone. He looks around and realizes that Quasimodo has captured him. Dracula runs after him, but Mavis intercepts along the way. She demands to know where Johnny is. Caught off guard, Dracula hesitates. He tells her she's too young to fall in love. Mavis reminds him that her mother met him at the same age. Just then, the guards interrupt. They inform him that Quasimodo is about to cook Johnny. Dracula arrives just in time. He casts a spell on Quasimodo to stop him and sets Johnny free. Dracula decides that if he wants Johnny to understand why he must leave, he needs to tell him the truth. He takes him to a dark, abandoned room. In the center, a painting was covered by an old cloth. Johnny looks at it and recognizes the scene. He's seen a similar image in the ruins of Castle Lubov. He tells Dracula the legend. A lonely count met a woman, and from the very first moment, their souls seemed destined to be together. They married, lived in the castle, and had a baby. But one night, for unknown reasons, a fire destroyed the palace, and the entire family perished. Johnny adds that the powerful love between those walls could still be felt when he visited the ruins. Dracula lowers his head. The legend is wrong. Not all of them died. Only she did. He removes the cloth and reveals the painting. It's him with Martha, radiant with love and happiness. But it wasn't an accident. Dracula knows exactly what happened. It was the humans. They hated vampires and attacked the castle. They surrounded it and set it on fire. Dracula asked Martha to hide while he tried to reason with them. But then he heard a scream. He ran to her, but it was too late. That day, he understood who the real monsters were. He took Mavis in his arms and fled the human world forever. Now we understand more clearly why Dracula fears humans so much. They took from him what he loved most, out of pure intolerance and cruelty. He tells Johnny that he built the hotel for Mavis to protect her, that as a father, he'd do anything to keep her safe, even lie to her. But now he knows that Mavis has feelings for Johnny. Johnny smiles, but Dracula stops him. That love could never work. Even if Johnny isn't a bad person, he's still human, and Mavis is a monster. No one would ever accept them. Johnny tries to tell him the world has changed, but Dracula interrupts him. Can you promise me that if we went out into the world, everyone would accept us? Johnny stays silent. Dracula has taken an important step. For the first time, he acknowledges that Johnny is not a threat and accepts that Mavis has grown up, but he's still trapped in his fear. He won't let Mavis go out into the world or fall in love if there's even the slightest risk. He wants absolute certainty, something that doesn't exist in real life. Johnny looks at the portrait once more and knows he has to leave, but Dracula stops him. He doesn't want to ruin Mavis's birthday. He asks him to wait until the party's over. This detail is important. At first, Dracula just wanted to get rid of Johnny as quickly as possible. His fear and rejection of humans were his top priority. But now, Dracula asks him to stay. For the first time, he places his daughter's feelings above his fear. While Mavis is getting ready, Dracula enters her room and places on her bed a gift her mother had prepared for her 118th birthday. The celebration begins, and Dracula's friends start playing music. But thanks to Johnny, everything's much livelier. When Mavis comes down, Johnny is mesmerized. Then he reveals the surprise he planned for her, a light show projecting images of the places he knows she dreams of visiting. Mavis is thrilled. They dance together and fall more and more in love. Dracula enters the party. He's in such a good mood that he starts dancing too, but then he sees his worst nightmare: Mavis kissing Johnny. Furious, Dracula confronts Johnny. Mavis steps in. She's had enough of being treated like a child. If she wants to kiss Johnny or explore the world, she should be allowed to. Dracula argues that she already saw the world and didn't like it. Mavis replies that maybe she deserves another chance. They argue until Dracula finally breaks down. He confesses that the human village never existed. He just couldn't risk losing her like he lost Martha. Mavis looks at him, hurt. She asks if he can really live with lying to her and keeping her locked away, knowing that her greatest dream is to see the world. Until now, Dracula had justified his control by claiming it was to protect Mavis. But for the first time, he realizes the harm it's caused. He's limiting her, robbing her of the chance to explore the world on her own, to build her own life, and to find happiness. Suddenly, Quasimodo bursts into the party. He points at Johnny and shouts that Dracula let a human into the hotel. His rats jump on Johnny, ripping off his makeup and ruining his hair, revealing his true identity. Everyone is shocked. Mavis turns to Johnny and asks if it's true. He apologizes and admits it. But Mavis doesn't flinch. She tells him she doesn't care, that she still likes him. Johnny is overjoyed, but then sees the look on Dracula's face. He steps away from Mavis and tells her he doesn't want to be with her, that she's a monster, and he hates monsters. In doing so, Johnny proves how wrong Dracula was about humans. Not only is he not cruel, he's also capable of sacrificing himself for the well-being of the monsters. Mavis locks herself in her room. Dracula follows her and tries to comfort her. He tells her that there are many monsters out there and that she doesn't need Johnny. But Mavis, through tears, shows him the gift her mother left her. It's a storybook. It tells the love story between Martha and Dracula. Two bats crossed paths in flight, felt a zing impossible to ignore. In 1 second, they knew without delay, a zing only happens once, and it's here to stay. At the end, there's a message. Your zing will come, my love. Treasure it dearly. Love, Mom. Mavis confesses that she believed she'd found her zing with Johnny, but now she realizes that she was the only one who felt it. She tells her father he should be happy. She no longer has any reason to want to leave. Dracula sees the sadness in his daughter and whispers, "Martha, what have I done?" He's come to understand that, in his attempt to keep Mavis safe, he's taken away her chance to truly live. He goes down to the lobby and finds angry guests. Dracula had promised them a human-free refuge and failed. Dracula apologizes. He tells them that after getting to know Johnny, he realized he wasn't a bad guy. In fact, he's no longer sure that humans are bad. He admits that Johnny and Mavis zinged. Everyone is shocked. You only zing once in a lifetime. His friends know they must support him. They have to get Johnny back. For the first time in centuries, he leaves the hotel and heads to the airport. This was a deeply symbolic moment. He finally stepped out of his comfort zone and dared to face a world beyond his control. The sun is rising. Dracula might burn, but he doesn't care. He'll do whatever it takes for Mavis. Before, the idea of facing any danger paralyzed him. But now he understands that there are some risks worth taking, even when there's no guarantee of survival. On the way, they arrive in a town full of humans dressed as monsters. It's a festival where everyone is dressed as their favorite creatures: mummies, vampires, and witches. The monsters are stunned. They had always believed humans hated them, but now they see them being celebrated. The car can't move through the crowd. They have to go on foot. But Dracula can't be exposed to sunlight, so they ask for help. They reveal their true identities, and, to their surprise, the humans don't hesitate to help them. Those dressed as Dracula form a long line and extend their capes, creating a bridge of shadows so he can cross without burning. Dracula runs along the bridge while the humans cheer him on. They shout that they're his fans and admire him. Dracula wasn't entirely wrong about humans. Some were cruel to him, cruel enough to take his wife from him. His fear was justified, but his view was incomplete. Meeting Johnny planted the first doubts in his mind. But now, seeing so many people celebrating him, he realizes he was too quick to judge. Not everyone is like those who hurt him. It reminds us that prejudice thrives on distance. The farther we are from what we fear, the easier it becomes to project our fears and assumptions onto it. But when we draw closer, when we see things firsthand, we realize not everyone fits the same mold. A handful of experiences don't define an entire reality, and judging a whole group by the actions of just a small few is a mistake. He arrives at the airport just as Johnny's plane is taking off. He has no choice. He transforms into a bat, exposes himself to the sun, and flies with all his strength. He reaches the plane and finds Johnny's window. He signals to him, but Johnny can't hear. Dracula flies to the cockpit and hypnotizes the pilot. Through the intercom, the pilot begins to speak. I made a big mistake. I wanted to keep my daughter all to myself because I felt I had to protect her, but now I understand I can't control everything. Children need to make mistakes, fall, and learn for themselves. And I know you and Mavis are meant for each other. You had a zing. If she's going to trust someone else with her heart, I'm glad it's you. Johnny accepts the apology. Dracula hypnotizes the pilot once more and makes him land the plane. Back at the castle, Dracula looks for Mavis. He tells her that he always thought the worst thing would be seeing her leave. But now he knows the worst would be seeing her unhappy. He wants her to live her own life. He gives her a birthday gift, a travel backpack, with Johnny inside the package. He tells her that she is his zing too, and that everything he said earlier was only to protect her father's feelings. Dracula hands her the Hawiwi postcard and says, go create your own paradise. Mavis and Johnny kiss. Soon after, everyone throws a farewell party for their big journey. Dracula gets on stage and for the first time in a long while, sings in front of everyone. Dracula went through a traumatic experience that caused him to shut himself off from the outside world. To prevent Mavis from suffering the same pain, he chose to protect her by keeping her away from any danger. But in doing so, he deprived her of two fundamental things. First, the opportunity to develop tools she would need to face challenges that life always brings. Ironically, in trying to protect her, he left her more vulnerable. Second, he deprived her of the experiences and opportunities that could have made her life richer. Yes, the world can be harsh and cruel, but the solution isn't to shut ourselves away completely, nor is it to ignore fear and leap forward without any caution. Fear has its purpose. It warns us, protects us, and helps us move through life more safely. But if we let it take over, instead of being a tool, it becomes a cage that limits and paralyzes us. The key, I believe, lies in finding a balance between Dracula and Johnny, opening ourselves to new experiences and exploring the world, but without the naivety of believing nothing can ever hurt us. It's not about avoiding risk, but about developing the tools to face it. And you? Are you more like Dracula or Johnny? Does fear protect you or hold you back? Let me know in the comments.